Let's cross now to Beirut and speak to our correspondent Layla Molana-Allen. Layla, the central bank governor has just held a press conference amid a worsening economic and financial crisis. What did he have to say?
He did. He said they have been doing everything they can to try and stabilise the lira, the Lebanese pound, and he said that these are extraordinary circumstances. He told everybody that more money has been taken out of the central bank between September and November of this year than was taken out in the last 3 years. Now, banks are closed today because it's a public holiday, and they had said they would close tomorrow too to give themselves a bit of time. But now the National Bankers Union has said that they are calling for a general strike of all bank workers until the central bank figures out a solution, because what's happening is, although Riad, the governor of the central bank, has said that they will not introduce any capital controls, that they won't stop people taking money out of their bank accounts, banks have been unofficially doing that, and ever since the banks opened a week ago, they've been reducing the amount people can take every day. That led this weekend to attacks against bank tellers because they wouldn't give people their money, and as such, bank employees are saying, we will not work anymore until you figure out what you're going to do.
Now, at the same time, we're hearing of protests continuing in the centre of Beirut, with demonstrators calling for the end to the rule by the banks. What more can you tell us about the mood on the streets?
There have been continuous protests throughout the weekend, and what's been interesting about these is they are now becoming far more organised. This is still a largely leaderless protest movement, but what's happening is protesters are using social media across Beirut and across the country to organise where they're going to go and for what reason. Yesterday we had protests outside the National Electricity Building because, of course, there is a massive detriment to electricity across the country. In Beirut, 3 hours every day of power cuts, and outside of Beirut, 12 to 18 hours of power cuts from the national supplier, and people's only alternative is to pay for very expensive and very polluting generators. So a huge crowd gathered yesterday and camped outside that building, and they blacked out the yellow gates, saying that it was symbolic of blacking out the lights, symbolic of the lights always going off because they never have enough power. Now, tomorrow there was supposed to be a parliamentary session to discuss a couple of things. Firstly, a graft law against people who are politicians who've been siphoning money off from the state to try and get that money back. And secondly, a general amnesty law to forgive lots of petty crimes over the last 2 decades that people feel, particularly in economically and socially disenfranchised areas, are reducing their quality of life. Now, that's been very popular among protesters, both of those laws, but the problem is people are now concerned that politicians might try and use that second general amnesty law to basically get themselves an amnesty against those financial corruption charges. So tomorrow calls to shut down the entire country from 1 p.m. and block off Parliament. But now the Speaker of Parliament, Nabi Berri, has responded to that, saying, well, we're just going to postpone that parliamentary session by a week. Very little movement from the politicians at this point. We know that the other day, caretaker Prime Minister Saad Hariri met with representatives from Hezbollah and Harakat Amal, the two main Shia parties. They are refusing to have an only technocratic cabinet. They're saying we also want current politicians in it. And of course, what protesters are calling for is a purely technocratic cabinet. So very little movement from politicians on what the solution is going to be. Protesters getting angry again and saying that we are going to move towards shutting down all those roads once again.
Layla Molana-Allen reporting there from Beirut. Thank you.